Hi, good morning. This is Dan for the Ben's Products YouTube channel. I am going over behind me here, I'd mentioned this in my last video, a mega container ship that cracked. The hull actually broke into, the middle of the hull actually cracked from metal fatigue. And you heard it here first. I think this is a real possibility for the evergreen Ever Given that's stuck in the Suez Canal. I have a bunch of stuff here with some new details here. Unfortunately, the efforts to free the ship on Saturday night did not work, and the ship is still stuck in the canal. And they are trying a few more things on it, and as every time they increase or up the ante and try to do more maneuvering with this thing, you have a greater possibility that it could end up like that. Now there's a few things that I'm reporting on here that I wanted to put in this video and bring to your attention, of course. And the crazy part is I've not heard any of this stuff on mainstream media. So while I have you here, please subscribe to the channel, to my channel. It's free to do. It's unlimited, the number of subscriptions, and it won't even notify you unless there's also a notification bell you could hit if you want to know when I upload a new video. This stuff is just kind of covered up. You have to have connections or be a mainstream reporter, mainstream media, to get any kind of featured video on here. And like I said, I haven't heard this stuff anywhere. That's why I'm following it myself, just for my own purposes, and I figured I would share it with you. And plus, I have a lot of cool stuff on my channel that's going to come out. I've done a number of cruises. I'm going to be putting high-def cruise footage up for 2 cruise ships I've been on that have been scrapped now during the pandemic. I had been on one of the last cruises on them before the scrapping. I figured that would be interesting to share. I've sailed transatlantic. I've done a number of different cruise lines and itineraries. And being that the cruises are shut down now, I figured that would be something good to put on the channel. I also do a lot of science-related stuff, and I have a lot of great ideas coming up on the channel. Some science experiments, repair videos, all kinds of life hack videos, stuff that is unique. So you never know what could be coming up on here. So please subscribe to it. A matter of fact, as I'm doing this, I have a ship model which I can use as well for this video here, which I will grab in a minute. Okay, so the Mole Comfort, which is behind me. This ship was one of the brand new 2008 built, called Post-Panamax container ship. And this ship is so large, this is considered one of the first mega container ships built. It was built in 2008 and had only been sailing for about 5 years. In 2013 it sunk. It was sailing during a storm or some rough weather off the coast of Yemen. It had suffered a crack around the midpoint of the ship, midship, and it was about 200 miles off the coast when this happened. Luckily, the crew was able to get off safely. They then proceeded to work on salvaging it. They were towing it, and the sections, the front section of the ship actually broke apart from the rear section. They then attached cables, they towed both sections, they were trying to tow. A fire broke out on one of the sections, and the two sections ended up sinking on different dates. The June 17th, 2013, the stern section, the bow section they broke apart that day. The stern section sank on June 27th, and the bow section sank on July the 11th. Now, this is ridiculous and terrible and all, and the reason why I went over this is because you're talking about in the open ocean, when those sections broke apart, they were still able to float. However, when this happens, they're going to float deeper in the water, and if this happens to the ship, the Evermore in the Suez Canal, the Ever Given in the Suez Canal, it will cause it to lodge into the bottom of the canal, and they will have to dismantle it to get the thing out of there. And that is a tragedy. That could take like a year or a ridiculous amount of time to do that, where it would be a blockage of the canal long term. So let's hope they can get the thing out. But this mole line Comfort, when this thing was so big, it developed this problem. This thing was 1,036 feet, but it was also, that's in length. The beam of the ship, they call it, which is the width of the ship, it was 149 feet 7 inches. Now, in comparison, the Ever Given, this ship is almost 200 feet wide. It is 192 feet 11 inches wide, and to be exact, 1,312 feet long. So you can see this thing is massive. It's much bigger than that first mega ship that had the problem. They have reinforced the hulls on these ships since that mole line ship had that problem and started to sink. They use metal plating that can be as thick as 3.5 inches. Massive. Just amazing they can even build this stuff. So back to the Ever Given. Just to show you, this thing, if they put too much stress on it, this could very easily crack. Nobody has been talking about this on the mainstream media. I'm the one bringing it up. You heard it here first. And what I'm going to do, okay, a few of the facts here, I translated over. This thing is powered by an 11-cylinder, just like the other ship. The prop spins super slow. It's only 79 RPM. If you've heard of the records, like the 45 LP, I believe, the record, that spun at 45 RPM, if I'm not mistaken. So this spins roughly double what a 45 record would spin. Massive propeller, slow speed propeller. Immense horsepower though, 59,300 kilowatts of power. I converted that over to horsepower. We're not really up on the kilowatt figures in the United States. It equates to 79,522 horsepower. Amazing horsepower. It's fed through a single shaft, single propeller shaft with one huge propeller on it. The ship does have 2 bow thrusters. However, I'm going to say here first, I think those bow thrusters are broken, because when the ship lodged into the side of the canal, those thrusters are up in the front, and they are probably buried in sand and possibly damaged. Also, the thrusters wouldn't have helped when the ship was sailing. I believe they can only be used when the ship is going extremely slow. I do not know the exact speed they were going, but I imagine any ship going through this canal would be going at most probably around 11 knots, probably around like 12 or 13 miles an hour, due to the tightness of the canal. Now, let me just show you. As far as the canal goes, the canal took 10 years to build, 1859 to 1869. And what I was interested in, Suez Canal, I wanted to know how wide is the canal. And it says that it can fit a ship maximum boat beam for the canal of 254 feet 3 inches. Now the Ever Given is close to 200 feet wide, so that only leaves a 50 feet. That's like 25 feet of room on either side. That's a very small amount of leeway. Now, I assume certain parts of the canal are narrower than other parts, but you get the idea. That's the information I found on the canal. And this canal, what it does is, this canal connects the Mediterranean Sea, which is up here, to the Red Sea, which is down here. And you can see how narrow this canal is. Very narrow passage. All the ships are up here in the Med, in this area, waiting now. And then there's ships down here in the Red Sea. You have the Med and you have the Red. That's easy enough. The ships are just waiting while this narrow passage is plugged. Now I wanted to show you, I have a ship over here. Excuse me for 1 second. This is a model ship, a model battleship. And I wanted to show you, this is where the bow thrusters would be. Right down in here, there would be holes with the propellers or impellers to move the front of the ship. But when the ship sails, this ship is not necessarily going to be sailing straight like this. It uses this rudder to deflect the water flow from the propeller here. So the rudder would turn one way to put the ship toward the winds that would be blowing. And it would do this balancing act and sail crooked like this through the canal during windy conditions. Now, I learned about this because I went on a cruise and the ship sailed out of Port Warmundi, Germany, and there's a narrow passage to get out of that port. The captain told me he had been nervous about that passage because his ship had to sail not sideways, but at an angle, just as I explained, due to high winds that particular evening and the current conditions that they had to go through. So he was explaining that the ship takes up more width. It needs a wider passage the more severe the weather is. So this is my theory, and you heard it here first. This has not been, I haven't heard anyone on mainstream media even reporting this. It's insane. So that was one of the reasons that I am saying that the thing ended up getting stuck. Now, here's the latest information I have to bring to you this morning. Over the weekend, they pumped out 9,000 tons of ballast water out of this ship, the Ever Given, to help it float a little bit higher. This ship, this is one of the problems with this size ship. It can draw the amount of water that's below the water line where the hull sinks down underwater, it is almost 50 feet of water. That's how much this thing can draw. 47 feet 7 inches to be precise. And I had looked this up on the Suez. I was curious about it. They said the maximum depth that the ships can draw is only about 65 feet. So you have very little leeway under the hull of this ship. And you can imagine the edges of the Suez are more shallow than the middle of it would be. So this is a very tiny, very tight passage for it to get through. And if this thing cracks, it will very easily bottom out on the canal floor and get stuck. So they removed the ballast water to try to make it float a little bit higher, but it will be very unstable if they break it free and you have any kind of wind action with all those containers on board acting like a sail. 20,000 tons of sand has been removed or dredged out around the front of the ship where it's stuck. Now here's something that has just broken. I've heard that there may have been a sandstorm as well as the high wind. Sandstorms, sand's kicked up by the wind, and it creates like blinding conditions. Now if you're on the bridge of the ship, and this is where the captain and the officers are with the navigation equipment, they're looking out over the bow of the ship, the front. The sandstorm can block their visibility. They may have had to rely on a electronic chart system where it uses GPS technology to show you where you're positioned, and driving the ship just based on that, not being or piloting the ship, not being able to see where you're actually going. When you're dealing with such small tolerances of leeway, that could cause a problem right there. That could have been what caused this whole accident. Blinding conditions in a sandstorm. Okay, that's one thing. They've also just reported that the ship had been steering erratically right before it had this problem, right before it got stuck. That could be explained by the sandstorm conditions. Trying to do that balancing act like I just showed you with the model ship, where you're trying to balance it out based on wind conditions. Okay, now this is breaking. They have 2 more tugs on the way to the scene as we speak. They already have a massive amount of tugs there already. I believe 10 tugs are already at the scene. Now, they keep adding on these tugs. This is what could end up happening. Attach more cables, pull it with more tugs, put more stress on the hull of that ship. This is a very fragile situation, and we're going to have to see how this plays out. The other stuff I've heard on the internet, they said people are worried that if anybody was smuggling anyone in these containers here on the ship, you can see how those things are stacked up, and I don't think you would be able to get to the opening of the container, the doors, because when these things are stacked on the deck, they put these metal cables behind them, and they're tensioned down. I believe it's called a turnbuckle. They're tightened down. They're heavy metal, like rods almost, with hooks, so that all these containers are rigid and they don't flex or shift when the ship is in stormy conditions. So they're kind of locked in place. People have said they're worried that if anyone was trying to smuggle humans in any of those containers, this is really bad. They may in fact be locked in there, God forbid. And this is there's been instances before where they have put people in there, and they put like food or whatever for a certain amount of time, and they expect the voyage to be only maybe like 10 days or 15 days, And then when something like this happens, this thing is stuck there longer. This could be a real tragedy. Now, the other thing that I heard in a press conference with the Suez Canal, they said the next step, they might try to take some of the cargo off the ship to lighten it. Okay, this is a huge undertaking. I'm going to show you why to conclude this video today. Right here, the ship is in port. These cranes you see up ahead, these are not attached to the ship. These cranes are land-based at the port. They're very high up to take these cargo off. They are trailer truck containers on here. So what I'm conveying is, in the past, older ships, they used to have their own cargo cranes built into the ship, so they could actually take the cargo off the ship or move it to another ship with their own equipment. This ship, that cannot be done. This is massively high up, and in order to get those containers off the ship, it's going to take a crane, and it looks like the crane would have to be floating at that to get up next to the ship, and you would probably have to transfer it onto a smaller cargo ship to move the containers, get them out. Big major undertaking. I don't even know how they're going to do it. Maybe even use perhaps a helicopter. You heard that here first. Another first. Perhaps a very high-powered helicopter could pull the container, lift them up, and put them onto another ship, because that's so high up. I don't know how else they would get to those containers. So that's the next step. They're trying to lighten the load. They got more tugs. They're going to try to pull it. Let's see what happens here, and we hope it doesn't crack. Hey, subscribe to the channel. It's a no-brainer to subscribe, that is. Hopefully not my information. And this way you'll be kept posted, because this is going to be buried. They love to feature the connected mainstream reporting. They don't. Nobody's even brought the subject matter up. A lot of this stuff that I reported, and I'm going to keep you posted on it, and we'll see how this plays out. So I'll catch you in the next video, and thank you for watching.